Logic in business. While an emotional trigger will help to stimulate buying behavior, when it comes time to justify the purchase, buyers often seek out logic. Part of being a good salesperson or business owner is being able to juggle multiple marketing paradigms at one time, and you have to consider that one solution never fits all. Some customers will be very easily controlled emotionally, but many will be analytical thinkers who don't just fall for those sort of tricks. For these types of clients and customers, we must present in a logical way that allows them to assess the facts and understand why your product or service is better, not just because you say so, but because it has proven results. Use logic. No one likes to feel they've been taken on a deal, and so the end result that even if the emotions have carried them away, they will always give a logical reason why they eventually bought the product. That's because people don't admit that it was an emotional response that instigated the buy. They'd rather admit there was a valid reason for the purchase. Knowing this, that a logical reason may be necessary for some to close a deal, and then you want to provide that logical reason just as you would attempt to resolve an objection before it is raised. It doesn't mean that the reason has to really make any sense. It just has to be enough to justify the purchase. It has to answer the question, why should I buy this product? The technique. Here you are going to aim a very definite reason why a customer should buy your product. It's typically done after an emotional appeal to seal the deal and give your ad a double whammy. You are going to look at the demographics of your visitor and you are going to try to put yourself in their shoes. What would be the defining reason to buy this product? There are a variety of reasons that can trigger different segments of the population to agree that to purchase your product makes sense. If you are dealing with people who are budget conscious, you can go after economic reasons. Another possibility is to focus on health as a reason. Maybe they are getting older and more health conscious. Maybe you are selling something to people who are sick. That can be a powerful reason to consider buying your product. Safety is also something that is topmost in people's minds. This might work well for some people and not for others. Safety means different things to different people. For mothers, child safety might be the reason that you need to express to close the deal. For elderly people, it might be personal safety when they are home alone. Aside from very logical reasons like that, you don't have to just concentrate on those. Sometimes some of the best reasons are status, especially if you are selling in the luxury market. In that case, the reason you give might be, you deserve it. Is there any logic to that? Not from an intellectual perspective, but from a reasoning standpoint, it makes perfect sense to a certain subset of people, particularly the affluent. Another reason that you can use is that it will enhance your personal or professional recognition. Another reason that you can use is that it will enhance your personal or professional recognition. That can be a powerful reason for people who are dating or seeking some sort of career advancement. Again, the reason you choose should fit the demographic of people you are marketing to. The way this strategy works best is if you can get into the mindset of the people you are marketing to and understand what type of objections they are likely to raise for themselves. If you are not sure what they are, you need to do a little market research with similar products that are selling online. Without understanding some of the potential objections that people might be thinking about when they view your sales page, you will not be able to successfully resolve them in a logical manner, and that's the key to this strategy. Once you determine the most typical objections, you will be able to think up the proper justifications to overcome them. By doing so, you will eliminate the last bit of resistance in your buyer's mind and close the sale. The secret. Our Western culture prides itself on being one of reason and logic. We rely on our intellectual capabilities to justify almost every aspect of our very existence. Since we are young, we are told that civilized people use reason and not emotion to understand their world. While that remains a deep part of our conditioning, the truth is that we react emotionally first, and then we attempt to justify our emotions with our thinking minds. So when the emotion is felt to make a purchase, we question it. We have a certain suspicion about salesmen and slick marketing tactics. The emotion stirred up by the copy may be so strong that people are just waiting to find the reason to justify to themselves that, yes indeed, this is a really good purchase. But without that reason, the sale is not finalized. That's because our conditioning steps in to warn us that anything that seems too good to be true usually is, unless we rationally analyze our course of action. A good salesman anticipates that as the starting point of a sales negotiation, not the end. He or she understands that the person who begins to create objections in their mind is actually considering buying the product, but the mental conditioning and inherent distrust built up about deals may be causing them to hesitate. The way they are taught to hesitate is to analyze the situation with their minds. So these people that are raising objections are already half sold. Otherwise, they'd simply walk away and never engage in any thought process to defend themselves from potentially making a poor decision. It's your job as an online marketer to understand what objections are typically going to occur at this stage of the game and resolve them satisfactorily to reduce the resistance to your sale. How to make it work. One can get very creative in implementing this strategy because the mind has a way of creating excuses when it really wants something. Realize that the sale was probably already made on an emotional basis. All you are doing now is closing the sale by engaging the proper reason to assuage our cultural conditioning. So even though you can go after reasons that make sense and go along with the product, there are plenty of reasons that don't exactly have to tie into the product, but offer some benefit and can be used to walk the logic labyrinth. For instance, say you are leasing vehicles. Well, you can talk all day long about the wonderful qualities of the vehicles and how leasing is such a flexible option. But the final reason that may make the most sense from a business perspective may be the potential ability to write off the lease on the company's taxes. You may wonder, where did that come from? Well, if you understood the demographic that is buying your product most, you may discover that it is companies that are leasing vehicles so they don't have to buy their own and maintain them. Instead, they buy a lease and use them only when they are under warranty. Maybe they even have a specific brand that fits their needs best and are already sold on that one model. So then, you know that other companies who are in competition may not understand how they save by leasing a vehicle instead of buying. So that can be a powerful logical argument to overcome objections from new customers who never thought about leasing before. In this scenario, the reason actually had very little to do with the product's features or quality. It had to do with a competitive edge and the ability to rationalize the purchase as a smart business expense. So that's how you can get extremely creative with this particular strategy. Don't just limit your reasons to things that tie into the product, but widen your net and cast it into the biggest possible incentive that makes sense for your demographic. However, if you find that you need to go with standard reasons, there are always reasons available tied to any product. For instance, if you sell computers, you may want to iterate how practical they are, how much work can be accomplished, or even what business-oriented security features the software comes with. Whatever you choose, it has to be something of interest to your demographic. If you are selling other technology, you can focus on how it does a specific function better than other products, how it can improve your productivity, how it simplifies a particular task. These are all very logical reasons that appeal to that crowd. One thing to remember when implementing this strategy is that it is related to the price you set for your product. In other words, if you have a high-priced item, you will have to justify it more than a less expensive product. The only time that may not be true is when you are marketing to an affluent demographic. Otherwise, you will always have to justify a more expensive product to someone, even if they are head over heels in love with it. Take luxury cars. There's really nothing all that much different from the way one car operates over another, so they have to be sold on the features, and the reasoning they give us is that even though it may have the same parts as another car, they are somehow better quality. It may be a car known for its smooth ride, or it may be known for its high safety record. Whatever the reason, it's really something that suggests the car outperforms other cars. After all, luxury cars are truly expensive. How would anyone be able to justify ever buying one based on the fact that they needed a car that took them from one place to another? Obviously, that strategy would not work. Instead, the logic has to include why it is so much better than other cars to justify the high cost. Despite this, it's almost certain that people who buy luxury cars are buying them based on the emotional impact, the feeling of specialness, the luxury of owning one. The way it associates them with a specific class of people is what really sells these cars. But if you were to ask anyone why they bought a luxury car, They would most likely opt to tell you it outperforms other cars because they have to justify the expense to you and to themselves too. The funny thing about the way to implement this strategy that it can actually pay to put in technical reasons to sell the product, even if most people have no idea what most of the features are in technical language. Take a look at how personal computers are sold. They will tell you it had this much RAM, hard drive space, and all kinds of technical features that the majority of people don't understand. The higher the price, the more the technical features are listed in one long list. That's because they are the reasons that people will justify buying a higher-priced computer versus a less expensive one, even if they haven't a clue what all those extra features are all about. They only know they have a very smart computer, and likewise, they feel smart opting for a fully loaded personal computer, even if all they want to do is type up a few emails or letters every now and then. The time to implement this strategy is after you've made the emotional sales pitch and the customer is wavering. It almost always comes at the end of a sales presentation, on the side of the box of the software, or as an inset for the PC advertisement. It's not the sole reason anyone is expecting to agree to buying your product. It's simply put there at the end to remove the last vestiges of resistance to buying the product. So for online marketing, it does go in your list of benefits if you have multiple reasons. But you should have one big reason at the end why this is the very best thing a person can do to resolve the problem that led them to your sales page. You can even put it in as an afterthought, as in, don't forget this product does this, and you should take advantage of that. Debug first. If you ask a salesperson whether an objection to their sales presentation is bad, you'll get the answer, no. A good salesperson knows that with any presentation or marketing, objections will arise. That's a good thing because once an objection is raised by the sales prospect, most marketers can resolve it and dismiss it, leaving the way clear to buying their product. So objections typically are raised by the customer in most sales transactions, but this strategy is done by the seller and not the potential buyer. That's right. You will be the one raising the objections so that you can just as swiftly dismiss them and get to the closing. The reason this particular strategy is important in online marketing is because you are not interacting with the potential buyer face-to-face. They visit your site, find something they like, and like any reasonable customer, they will start to think of reasons they shouldn't buy it. That's just what most people do. They resist being marketed. So if your product has any obvious flaws, that's exactly the first objection that will be raised in their mind. Maybe the product is ugly, or it costs too much, or it's gotten bad reviews. Don't wait for the customer to raise that objection in their own minds and click away. Instead, you raise it first. So if you know your product costs more than all the competitors, raise that first by saying that your product costs more specifically because it's better than your competition. Then go on to use that as a lead into the benefits. The technique. The strategy is to disarm your buyer by bringing up the objection first, before they even have time to think about it or utter it in their minds. This works whether the product has some faults or not, but it is especially effective with those that have obvious faults. Don't believe that a buyer will miss a flaw with the product, or that if you concentrate on only highlighting the good qualities, that the bad qualities won't be noticed. Consumers are very sophisticated these days. Online retailing has made it incredibly easy for them to comparison shop without having to visit multiple stores. Some sites even have reviews of products online that tell them which kinds are the best. Of course, magazines like Consumer Reports will tell buyers what basic features they can expect from a product and what makes one a better deal than another. It's a bit naive to think that you will have a totally uninformed consumer drop by your website and not notice anything that is obviously flawed about your product. That doesn't mean you can't bring that up first and either make it a feature or find a way to resolve that objection that satisfies them as fair. The secret. When you bring up an objection first, it has a couple of effects. First, it makes you appear to be honest and forthright because you willingly brought up the subject first. It also decreases the resistance your buyer may have to the objection because you've reframed it in a way that acknowledges the flaw, but gives them a way to justify it. So by simply being willing to be upfront, you can undercut the objection before it happens. This is a way of disarming the reaction of the buyer by simply acknowledging the concern up front. If, on the other hand, you took the tact of trying to avoid the flaw and hoping they didn't see it, you would appear to be deceitful, and the person would lose confidence in the sale. If you brought up the flaw but minimized it as a valid objection, your buyer will wonder what else is wrong with your product that you don't think is worth mentioning. But if you bring up the flaw, acknowledge it, and then resolve it for them in a way that they can justify the purchase, you close the deal. In a way, the buyer is more likely to trust the rest of the presentation because you didn't gloss over the bad features of your product. Since you were honest enough to be upfront, that lends you credibility, and that credibility rubs off on the product, whether it deserves it or not. And when you go on to actually talk about the positive features, they are given more weight because you were honest with the negative ones. While you might think people would be turned off by acknowledging a defect, hiding it under the rug is a worse offense in most people's minds. How to make it work. This is something that you should consider when you have a product or service with an obvious flaw. So let's say that you are trying to sell used tires. Okay, used tires are obviously not as good as new tires, are they? Well, you can't advertise the tire like new tires. So you admit, hey, they're used tires. Then you can go on to say that despite the fact they are used tires and not brand new, they are checked to make sure they have sufficient tread on them, they pass some inspection for holes, etc. You offer a guarantee should they not last a certain amount of miles, and you can still offer the same brands that other retail people sell brand new. Oh, and don't forget that if they're used, you save money too because the price is lower for the same name brands. This works very well if you are selling items on eBay and they are not new or they have some obvious defect. You want to be completely upfront with that defect. It should be the very first thing you discuss so that there is absolutely no misunderstanding that the product may be perceived to be flawed by other standards. The worst thing that can happen online is that your customer gets a product delivered to them that doesn't match the description on your website. You can expect them to not only never buy another thing from your site, but on eBay and places that allow your customers to provide feedback, you will get negative feedback and scare other customers away. However, that doesn't mean that you can only sell new products that are in perfect mint condition online. Far from it. It means that you need to be explicit about the condition of the items that you are selling and very upfront about them. Another way to implement this is to offer a limited guarantee on the product. That way, if the person is completely unsatisfied, they can return it or get some form of compensation for their troubles. This is one way to dismiss many objections people might have about buying items that aren't new or in perfect condition. Unfortunately, online, people don't always read every piece of copy you put up about your product. However, they do usually read the very first part of the copy before scrolling down. It seems strange, but that's where you will put the acknowledgement of the defect. If you bury it elsewhere in the copy and get an order and the customer becomes irate, directing them to the online copy where your flaw is buried 2/3 of the way down the page is going to make them even madder. On the other hand, if you say, yeah, this piece of art is but ugly, it's a great way to get attention and dismiss the worst defect you have on the product. Maybe the piece of art you are auctioning is but ugly. However, it's also one of a limited collection of prints made by a celebrated artist and worth hundreds of dollars. The customer scrolling through eBay or your site will initially be shocked to see that you actually admit that this product you are selling has an obvious flaw. They may even find it humorous. It will definitely get their attention, and that will lead them to read the rest of the copy, which explains all the other defects and how you can dismiss the defect as either part of the charm of the piece or as not consequential to its actual value. Don't be afraid to get down to the real nitty-gritty details of why the product is flawed. Maybe it's ugly because it has too many loud colors. Maybe it's ugly because it has drab colors. Maybe it's ugly because it's abstract or too primitive. Whatever the problem is, be very clear that you understand that this is something that most people would consider an undesirable trait. Then go on to dismiss it by building up the positive benefits of the product immediately afterwards. You are dismissing the flaw either by addressing the concern directly, or you are going to show that despite this flaw, the benefits of the product far outweigh the flaw mentioned. This strategy is often used by real estate agents when they show houses with obvious flaws. They might point out the fact that the house is a little older than desired by their client, but the location is so good that the money they save in buying an older house can be used to update it, and then they have both a good location and a newer home. They might show off the carpet with badly stained carpets and tell their buyers that since the carpets are so badly stained, they can ask for a carpet allowance and put in whatever they want after they move in, making it their own. The trick here is to do this as people are considering buying your product, not as an introduction, but as part of the description of the item. Obviously, this strategy is best left to the actual sales page than as a way to introduce a product to people on online forums or discussion groups. It's for people who already have a good idea that they want to buy in this category and that they may have some decisions to make on whether a flaw that is apparent is a deal breaker or not. The time to bring up a defect is not after you've sold the item on the benefits, but before. It should be brought up immediately before the person has time to discover it themselves, but not as an introduction to people who haven't had a chance to discover your site yet. It's like the difference between seeing a house on the market and wanting to visit it and being at the door of the house and opening the door to actually experience it. If you are imagining the house from afar, if you start to talk about the flaws even before you visited it, the value of the house plummets and you're less likely to visit the house. You haven't had a chance to experience it so that the better characteristics of the house can outweigh the flaw. So don't mention these items unless they are already in an area where they have an option to buy and can have a full experience of the product you are offering. Then it's more like you are there with a potential buyer and they are walking through the door as a real estate agent to show them your property that is for sale. If you are walking into a house as a real estate agent, you can say, "The appliances are old, but you can always ask for an appliance upgrade if you like the house." You don't wait until the person walks into the kitchen, stares at the appliances, and then says, "The appliances are outdated." If you've been in this house before, you should know the negatives, and it should be said as you're opening the door to let them in, preferably before they've even had a chance to see the kitchen. If you bring it up early in the experience, but not before they're actually there with you visiting the products, and in all its glory detail, they imagine something far worse, and when they get to the kitchen, they might even mutter, "It's not that bad." That's because you are so upfront with them that they realize it's not a big deal. Online, you don't want to put all kinds of objections on your homepage, but you do want the sales page to have them if you know there is a problem with the product. If you are doing eBay to make sales and using them as a sales partner, you will want to make sure it is in bold and a title heading at the top of the page. You don't want people to miss it and end up with something they object to after they've already paid for the item. That will only get you irate customers and negative feedback, so the best timing is always right up front. Create opportunities from issues. If you do not spot a problem with your product, you can dismiss it, as in the earlier example, or you can convert it into an opportunity. This strategy is a little more creative than the last one, where you were just being blunt about your dirty laundry. In this one, you are being truthful about the problem, but you are reframing it from a negative to a positive. Once people start to see that you may have a point, that negative really is a positive, then you don't even have to dismiss the objection. It becomes another selling feature. So you do have to raise the objection first and use the strategy in Chapter 4, but you want to resolve the objection on a positive note. If you can be really creative and sell that problem as a feature, it can be a way to disarm and even charm people reading the copy on your website. The technique. The strategy involves learning how your potential buyers perceive your product and any objections they might raise in their own minds. You don't have to be a mind reader to figure that out. You can simply ask them. You can set up surveys that offer a discount coupon on your products or offers a freebie to get a little market research on particular products. You have to know which objections might be converted into opportunities, and often they may not even be objections that you would think about first. You can even add a few posts about a product on some group site or your own forums and see what people don't like about the product as well as what they do like. Some of these objections may be specific to your particular product, but others might be pretty generic. For instance, say you are selling tattoo templates online. Well, you obviously aren't the only one selling tattoo designs, and you can visit specialty groups and forums to find out what people are talking about. They might be discussing which tattoo designs are the best, or which ones to avoid. They could be talking about the seriousness and permanent nature of tattoos. Maybe you hear about the bad reactions people got years later from some tattoo they got when they were younger. The focus is on the fact that tattoos are essentially forever. However, it also happens to be the opportunity because tattoos are permanent. They don't rub off, they are unique and can highlight your personality or mark a particular moment or event in your life, and you will always have that remembrance. Even though some people will see the indefinite nature of tattoos as a potential problem, many people will be drawn to them for that same reason. All you need to do is educate the person visiting your site on why it is more of an opportunity than a potential problem. For this, you can even suggest that some tattoos now come with ink that can be removed with a laser later. In the case of tattoos, we have a generic problem that crops up that makes an excellent opportunity. However, there may actually be problems that are specific to your product. In the case of the earlier example of a piece of art that is terribly ugly, would you be able to make it an opportunity? It is possible with a little creativity. Aren't ugly works of art controversial and conversation starters? Maybe it represents a particular time period of style of art that is only recognized by discriminating art buyers. In that case, the fact that it is ugly is the opportunity to express exactly why you were savvy enough to buy this piece anyway. It shows you are a person who understands art and the value of a piece of work. The secret. Even though the major part of this strategy is to reframe a negative into a positive, you don't want to try to force something that will never be. You don't want to try to convince the potential buyer of something that is ludicrous or a stretch to believe, because people are pretty smart about that sort of thing. So you are reframing the object into a positive, but in a way that is believable. In another way, if you happen to reframe something that would normally appear negative into a positive in a bright and refreshing way, people will be surprised at first. That surprise lowers their resistance to believing the new way the problem is turned into an opportunity. Again, by raising the objection first, you have gotten the upper hand. You have set the stage to be the authority on this particular problem, and you have guided the potential buyer to a solution that not only resolves the problem, but presents them with a great opportunity too. At first, it will stir up feelings of shock that you dared to bring up the problem first. Then it will lend you credibility and provide your voice with more authority on the subject. Finally, it will reduce their defenses and make it easy for them to go along with your final assessment of the problem as an opportunity. They will be grateful you actually pointed out something to them that they just might have missed. How to make it work. Okay, so you've done some market research and gotten a list of possible objections for your particular product or market. For each product, take out a sheet of paper and create 2 columns by running a line down the middle of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. On the first side, list all of the objections that you discovered or thought up, and then start to go through them one by one. You don't want to pick every objection and try to make it an opportunity. What that will do is make people think that there are far too many problems with the product and you're just messing with their minds. If you pick an objection that is not very serious to highlight because it is easily converted into a positive, it will make you appear condescending instead of helpful. If you pick something that isn't really an objection, you think it just might be able to be perceived as one, you are going to be raising an objection in your potential customer's mind that might never have surfaced. This will make them stop and think about what other red flags they've missed. So you don't want to pick a weak objection or one that is non-existent. What you want to do is locate serious objections that people might have to your product and then creatively turn them into a positive. So be careful which objections you consider to highlight, as it can make or break this strategy. Once you know which objections might qualify for this strategy, the fun starts. You have to be very creative and think up a resolution for each strategy that makes that problem an opportunity. There are some objections that are universal, not specific to your market or to your product. These are things like the price is too high, it takes too long to get it, it's not convenient, or the competition has better or different features. Don't forget that you can target these objections as well, and maybe you want to start with them for every product, just to get the hang of this. Then you think up a reason for why that objection is really an opportunity. A classic example of this is when you have a product that is really expensive when compared to the competition. You can say it is a good value for the money because it offers more features than the competition too. So while you pay more than the others, you get more, and in the end, it is worth more too. This may be a little more canned in an online presentation than in a regular face-to-face presentation. If you are meeting a sales prospect in person, you can often hear the objections live and/or anticipate them better from the comments they make. Online, you can't really interact that much with your visitor, so you have to take the strategy of doing your research and then picking just one of the biggest flaws and using that as a lead in your sales page. If you have multiple objections you want to resolve, then you can use a tablet that compares features between your products and other leading brands. Tables are very easy on the eyes of people reading online materials. So they can see that price-wise you are more expensive, but then the rest of the features are checked for you and your competitors' columns are empty. This gives a very big visual impact and is a way of raising objections and resolving them without having to explain it out in a paragraph. The table is a visual tool that does it for you. Always, always, always be upfront about any flaw or objection that is going to be a major concern for your customer. If you fail to address it, the potential buyers might bring it up or they might not, but they will surely be thinking about it. If you don't bring it up, it will never be resolved in their minds. An unresolved objection is going to dampen your sales. So despite the fact that it may seem strange to be bringing up your product's bad points, it's far worse to not acknowledge them at all. So what happens if you were in the middle of a sales presentation and the product breaks or it doesn't perform the way you would expect it to? Acknowledge it right away and let people know the reason for that particular problem. Maybe you can bring up the fact that even if the product does not perform the way advertised, there is a guarantee they can use to get a replacement or something similar. Sometimes people don't want to buy things online because they don't know what they're going to get when it arrives. This is particularly true of diamonds. The biggest objection from a person buying a diamond online is how could they be sure the diamond they received was worth the thousands of dollars spent on it? So many online diamond retailers raise that objection as a valid objection and showcase the fact that their diamonds are appraised by a particular agency. Or they might discuss how the value is established and how safe the delivery is and any money-back guarantees too. Now, the fact that you're buying a diamond online and may not be able to visually see it before it arrives and don't know how to determine worth is an opportunity to have a valid certification of your diamond for free through the website's policies. The timing of this strategy is similar to the last strategy. Always bring up the objection first before your customer has a chance to do it for you. You can shock them with the declaration of a particular problem. You can even not make it a statement, but a question, like, are you afraid that you don't know if the diamond you buy online is worth what you paid for it? That lead-in will automatically bring people in because it acknowledges a fear that may lurk in the mind of the prospect, but that has not been verbalized. Once you verbalize it, many people can relate to that fear and it draws their attention as being relevant to their personal experience. You come off looking as someone who is sympathetic and understanding for even bringing it up. Then when you provide the resolution, our diamonds are certified by third-party appraisals that are board certified to be. You have not only given the prospective buyer the solution right away, but also relieved the fear and anxiety experienced with that particular problem. That sense of immediate anxiety and relief can end up leading to an instant sale. You can do this very well in a targeted email campaign for those people who have subscribed to your email list. Don't spam people with advertisements, but if you are trying out a new product that most people have a problem buying online for some reason, you can use that niche to help you use this strategy by turning that objection into an opportunity. When presented correctly, it can be a way to engage the reader and draw them into your copy far enough for them to find the solution to their problem and associate your product with a new opportunity for themselves. Authenticity engages trust. In the past, marketers tried to glamorize their products or services in a way that was clearly inauthentic. The type of hype seems to have really jaded a lot of consumers who are pretty savvy these days. They are more likely to turn a deaf ear to outrageous claims or over-the-top commercial images than to pay attention. They do not engender trust. The newer way to generate trust is not to try and pull the wool over anyone's eyes, but rather to be authentic with your product and who you are. In the age of social networking, more and more people are beginning to learn the value to their social reputation. A reputation that is misrepresented is one that is not trustworthy. If a person is not trustworthy, they do not have enough credibility to sell anyone in such a transparent environment. What will happen is that others in the social network will appear to warn people about the lack of authenticity, and their social reputation will plummet, along with their sales. Now, you can be authentic without necessarily being a squeaky clean moralist. Authenticity basically means that you have enough integrity to express things exactly as they are. If you are a person who sells diet advice, but can't be bothered to control your own diet, that lack of integrity is going to come back to bite you in a social networking situation. However, if you are authentic and say that you could never stay on a diet and didn't see the reason for them, and then you found this diet and it helped you lose 50 pounds, then you are being authentic. Thus, it becomes more and more important to believe in the products and services you are selling, to be able to report on them authentically and engender trust. The technique. Consistency is the byword here. If you are consistent in your words and actions, then you become more authentic and can be trusted more. We've all had the experience of seeing someone say one thing and do another. What impression does that leave? You immediately realize that the person is a hypocrite or a con at worst, and doesn't know what they're talking about at best. So to avoid giving off that impression, always make sure that your actions match your words. This goes for the way you describe you, your product, and to how well you keep your promises to the people buying from your site. One way to establish authenticity is to either bank on your own reputation or someone else's well-known reputation. You build a reputation through social networking that carefully represents the image you want for your company or product. Or if you don't want to go through all that trouble, you find ways to associate with people who have already done that, have a high degree of credibility, and then get them to endorse your product or services. Be clear about whether all your copy, all your products, and your public image are in line with the way you want people to perceive you. If you genuinely believe in what you are selling, that will come through and people will catch your enthusiasm simply from the power of your own self-trust. However, the same is true if you are careful with the copy or the image you are portraying. If you sell diet products and you are 50 pounds overweight, people will notice it, even if not consciously. You don't want to put your image on that website if you are seriously overweight because it shows you aren't being authentic about helping people lose weight. So much of this strategy is about being aware. Be aware what image you are projecting. Be aware what topics or writing is subconsciously influencing your potential buyer. Be sure that anything you associate with, whether it be a celebrity or an affiliate, be in line with that image you want for you and your products. Secondly, always deliver more than what you promise, and your authenticity and integrity score will shoot through the roof. The secret. If you are engaging in online marketing and you are trying to sell products or services without even knowing a potential prospect, the need for authenticity increases. It has taken quite a bit of time for people to begin to trust e-commerce, and many of the reasons for that is because of the potential for being conned online. Visitors will be trying to gauge your authenticity from every piece of email, copy, blog, or image they view. They want to know that you are trustworthy enough to deliver what you say you deliver. After all, no one wants to send money and either get nothing or a very bad product in return. Since they can't even touch the product they are requesting, it becomes more important they trust the vendor enough to deliver what they promise. When you go retail shopping, you can look into someone's eyes and get a good feel for whether someone is trying to con you or not. The cues for that behavior may be subtle, but people have a sixth sense about these things. They want that firm handshake, that eye-to-eye contact, that honesty, and that ability to resolve their issues for them. In addition, they like to be able to view a product before they actually buy it. They might want to touch it or try it out first, too. Well, when all of that is denied, they have to rely on someone else's word for whether they are engaging in a good transaction or whether they are just throwing money away. In order to relieve that anxiety, you implement the strategy to increase your level of authenticity to promote a sense of mutual trust. But how are you going to do that online when they can't even see your face, much less touch the product? Implementation. The key is in the subtle cues that are given off by all your interactions with a potential buyer. Make sure that every one of your interactions reflects exactly the image you want for your company, your products, or your services. Things to look for in copy or interactions that could set off doubts in your buyer's mind are things like over-exaggerating your product's benefits or speaking out of context from the image you want to portray. The best way to avoid some of these subtle patterns of speech that can trigger doubts about your authenticity is to pay attention or to avoid marketing anything you don't believe in 100%. Let's face it, if you are selling acne products and you've either never tried it because you never experienced a bad outbreak, or you tried it and it failed to work for you, when you go out to sell that product, the lack of enthusiasm and belief will shine through the choice of words, the images you use, and any other interaction. It's a part of you. And despite the fact that you may try to convince yourself that it is really a product that is worth marketing, because acne products sell well on the internet, you will find that if you don't believe in it, your words and interactions will take on a subtle tone of over-exaggeration or bland endorsements. Worse, when someone contacts you directly to ask what your experience was with the product, you may even have to outright lie to save face. This isn't to suggest that you shouldn't sell that particular acne product. The problem is the way you implement the strategy. If you are endorsing it personally, you are going to want to have some good experiences with the product to remain authentic while selling it. If you are simply choosing acne products as your main market, then you can include it with other acne products that you know do work and simply rate it lower than the other products or leave it unrated. That way you maintain a degree of authenticity while being able to promote more products. And you may find a way to engage your visitors by asking them to rate the products themselves for others. Then you not only get authenticity from unpaid-for reviews, but you didn't have to put up your own reputation in the process. Forms of this strategy are the celebrity sponsor who tells everyone that they've used their products and like them. Just be sure it is a celebrity that reflects your values and the product's proper image. If your celebrity just got convicted of dogfighting racketeering charges, you would not want them endorsing your pet products. Social networking also takes this strategy to new heights. If you have a discussion group or forum and you have a new product, you can offer the product out to the first 10 people who ask for it in exchange for a review of it on the site. Since many discussion groups, social networking sites, and forums have a large audience, you end up picking up a great deal of authenticity by using random people who will give their honest opinion on your products. Just be sure they are good products and good reviews. The timing for this is right in the middle of your sales presentation. Once your sales prospect is engaged and they are a loyal visitor to your site or a subscriber to your blog, endeavor to be consistent and trustworthy in all your interactions. This will help to keep people coming back again and again. Another time to use this is when you are putting out brand new products. There, you have to attract new sales, and banking on your reputation is one way to help spur the belief that this new product is just as good, if not better, than your other products. Engage others to review your product too, and this will help to spur sales. Capitalize on the authentic image you've already created with your past customers. That's the time to market people who already trust you by making sure they are updated on all the new products that you are selling. This can lead to many repeat sales. Finally, the best way to establish authenticity is to deliver what you promise, when you promise it. Some people try to do this even better by always delivering more than they promise and earlier than expected. That gives them a little leeway should the post office screw up the timing or something else happens. So if you want to be perceived as being truly authentic, strive to take control of all aspects of your business from delivery to customer support. Failure in any of these areas will reduce your authenticity because it reflects badly on the consistency of the promises you make and what is finally delivered. If you want to see if your authenticity is being questioned, simply send out customer satisfaction surveys on a regular basis or after an online transaction. These are pretty easy to implement on your site and can help you find areas that are not meeting the high standards of consistency that you want to maintain. You can have these collated monthly for review and/or endeavor to contact people who put in negative feedback immediately without delay. This helps to reduce the impact of any failure in your consistency and can even increase your authenticity if you manage to resolve a problem that has plagued a customer who didn't know what to do or who to contact to resolve the issue. It also shows you care about your customers.